The Home Guard, that last-ditch defence force set up in May of 1940, Britain was staring down a barrel of German invasion. From its inception as the LDV, the Local Defence Volunteers, to the day they were stood down in December of 1944, they stood ready, with the defence of the realm as their motivation. However, since the war, the Home Guard's reputation has differed somewhat. The hugely successful UK sitcom Dad's Army, that ran from 1968 to 1977, details the exploits of the fictional Wilmington-on-Sea Home Guard, and for me has served the memory of the Home Guard twofold. One, its popularity has cemented the Home Guard in popular culture, ensuring that the memories and actions from the people who served in it will forever be preserved. But this comes with a caveat. The myths that have perpetuated since the airing of this seminal TV sitcom have, in my mind, damaged the Home Guard's reputation within certain areas. Please don't think this video is solely to besmirch Dad's Army. It isn't. But the series in my mind has brought up questions and held up myths that link back to the Home Guard's proper history. With this video, I'll be attempting to debunk 5 myths on the Home Guard. Before we begin, I'd be delighted if you considered subscribing to the channel. Kicking off this video with the elephant in the room, we're all familiar with the image of the main cast of Dad's Army, from the pompous but well-meaning Captain Mannering to the bayonet-obsessed Lance Corporal Jones. The image of that eager, yet old Home Guard volunteer is evident not only within that programme, but within contemporary depictions of the Home Guard during the war. This famous image of a sergeant from the Dorking Home Guard cleaning his Tommy gun on the kitchen table portrays that eternal cultural memory of the Home Guard in one rose-tinted scene. But not every one of these volunteers were old soldiers. Hortin Leonard Mundy, who served in the Ox and Bucks during the First World War, was serving in the Wolverton Works Unit Home Guard, and he said this of the men who served alongside him. You had the young men who was in reserved occupation. They were the young chaps, round about 20 and 30, well educated, and they knew the job well. The men in reserved occupations, such as factory workers, were already invaluable to the war effort, but also helped keep the age range of the force down as a whole. One early LDV volunteer, Frank Walford from Romford, Essex, was 18 when he signed up to the LDV. He later wrote this of his time in the service. In truth, it should have been called Kids Army, for that's what it was. The majority of our company were youngsters like myself and my kid brother who was 15 at the time. A 1943 Charles Graves book, The Home Guard of Britain, puts the average age of the Home Guard to be under 30 at the time of its publication. However, I've yet to find a source to back up this claim. But as can be seen of film reel of Home Guard on exercises, men do appear to be younger than what we imagine when we think of the old contemptible defending the realm from Nazi invasion. Obviously, not all of the Home Guard was made up of young men, as a majority were serving in the regular army, and as we've seen from testimonies and contemporary footage from men in the Home Guard, they were not old by any means, and all served their units with devotion and dedication to their duties, regardless of age. In this image, taken sometime from around mid-1940, shows a sergeant instructor demonstrating a P14 rifle to 2 LDV volunteers at Bisley Ranges in England. The 303 P14 Enfield and the American-made M1917 rifles go hand in hand when we think of the main armaments of the typical Home Guardsman. By the end of 1940, the government had purchased over 600,000 P14 rifles. However, these rifles took time to reach the UK by convoy, and there were shortages among Home Guard units. These early shortages, along with popular imagery of men in suits armed with broomsticks, has propped up the myth of the plucky but lightly armed Home Guardsman. Initially under-equipped for the task of defending the nation, as time went on, the force went from wooden training rifles to full-blown artillery pieces in a matter of months. The need to hastily equip the Home Guard and rearm the regular army at the same time often left the Home Guard with the army's hand-me-downs, but steadily the Home Guard built a sturdy catalogue of arms and armour. During its lifetime, the Home Guardsmen were issued with a plethora of small arms, including the Tommy gun, Sten guns, Bren guns, SMLEs, BARs, and Lewis guns, to name but a few. Among the first anti-tank weapons to be introduced into Home Guard service was the Blacker Bombard. This was a 29mm spigot mortar designed by Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Blacker, later famous for assisting in the development of the Piat. The cumbersome weapon was often mounted on concrete plinths in a defensive role. The Bombard developed somewhat of a Marmite reputation during its wartime service. Its stopping power was undeniable, but it was not popular with many of the Home Guard units that crewed them. It was ugly, heavy, and totally useless. None of us broke into a gallop while carrying the weapon. They also had the use of the Northover projector. This simple-looking grenade launcher fired the No. 76 Special Incendiary Grenade, along with Mills bombs, and the No. 68 anti-tank grenade. Easier to manoeuvre than the Bombard, the Northover was not without its problems. Upon firing the weapon, it would emit a large plume of white smoke, thus giving away the location to any panzers roaming around the area. The weapon was a welcome stopgap when the need for anti-tank weapons to counter an invasion was of paramount importance. The Home Guard also used a Smith gun, which is featured in this 1943 training film.
4 men using toggle ropes and common sense can easily manhandle the Smith gun into position. Over she goes. Number 1 makes sure of his crest clearance, and the gun is loaded. The Smith gun is in position and everything is now ready for the first stage of the assault. The platoon commander gives the signal to start the bombardment.
By the end of the war, the Home Guard had been equipped with battle dress and their own webbing. In 1944, the men looked and acted like soldiers of the regular army, which leads us to our third myth. Originally called the LDV, Local Defence Volunteers, the name was lampooned by newspapers at the time to look, duck and vanish. They were, of course, renamed the Home Guard upon the behest of Prime Minister Winston Churchill. This kind of joking still conjures up thoughts of untrained and unprepared civilian soldiers. However, this was far from the case. Tom Wintringham, a Spanish Civil War veteran, set up a training school for the Home Guard in the summer of 1940 and gave training in his brand of guerrilla warfare to nearly 5,000 men at Osterley Park in Middlesex. He also produced a number of training pamphlets instructing the civilian soldiers in all manner of military tactics. As well as his works, there was a plethora of commercially available Home Guard manuals. My personal copy of the Gale and Polden produced House-to-House Fighting is a snapshot of the type of manual available to Home Guards during the conflict. The training of the Home Guard was also used for home front morale boosting propaganda. Take this Ministry of Information film starring Bernard Miles. It gives us a glimpse into the kind of training being taught to the men of the Home Guard at these schools.
Then you take what's called the course. That's half theory and half practice. Second day, they done a proper dive bombing attack on us. Right the way down from 8,000 feet, he come roaring. The instructor shouts out aircraft scatter and you couldn't see us for dust. Out of that, we done machine gunning. I wouldn't mind going out rabbiting with one of them. I reckon I couldn't miss. I learned how to handle one of these Tommy guns and all. That fires at the rate of 600 rounds a minute. I reckon I'd rather be behind it than in front of it anyway.
They kept you busy then?
We had to do a lot of brain work too. Like working things out, what's called tactics. If he goes here, I shall go there. If he does this, I shall do that, see? Like finding your way about at night without a compass and making out a report of operations. Delivering a message without messing it about. That's not as easy as it sounds, I might tell you, either.
As you can see in this film, the men are a far cry from wooden rifles and broomsticks. No, they didn't. In Anthony Eden's speech from the 14th of May 1940, he states, "You will not be paid, but you will receive uniform and will be armed." But I did come across this letter sent to the Times newspaper by an anonymous member of the Home Guard, bemoaning the grant afforded to him for his service uniform. Sir, the The proposed grant of 1 shillings and 6d per week to members of the Home Guard appears to be an absolute waste of government funds, as not one man I've spoken to wants to accept it. We are giving our services voluntary and do not expect any remuneration. My last myth is one that I hope many of you watching already know the answer to. It is true that the Home Guard never had to fight off a German invasion. As we've learnt in today's video, they were more than equipped and willing to give Hitler a bloody nose should the need have arisen. But they actually did fight back against Hitler's forces in anti-air roles. By mid-1944, over 100,000 Home Guard volunteers were serving on AA batteries up and down the UK, having been needed to fill the gaps created by men of the regular forces being needed for the upcoming invasion of mainland Europe. However, the Home Guard had been aiding air defences earlier than this. A 1942 poster exclaimed, "Shoot them down yourself, join the anti-aircraft Home Guard." The Home Guard AA units wore a bow and arrow badge, denoting their specialist role, and were often seen manning Z batteries, an anti-air rocket launcher. The men who served in the anti-air Home Guard prided themselves on being the sole Home Guard units that saw direct action with Hitler's forces. Len Barton recalled this upon being stood down. "I continued my service career until the Home Guards stood down and participated in the march past London, in which we, the AA Home Guard, who were alone engaged in actual combat on a regular basis against the enemy, we accorded the honour of the rear position and took the salute from the King and Queen." As we've explored today, the exploits and equipment afforded to the Home Guard during their wartime service should not only be remembered by the TV adventures of Dad's Army. The programme does give the Home Guard cultural immortality, but for the real Dad's Army, their willingness to serve their local community shines through. I will leave you with a quote from the book From Dusk Till Dawn by A.G. Street. "They may or may not be successful in their fight, but they will take steps immediately to deal with the coming attack. No one will even consider any alternative. There'll be no tankitis, none will flee their village on the other side. There is no manner of doubt, no probable possible shadow of doubt." Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you again in the next one.